Yeah, I guess you're all wondering by now, you really want to know the answer to why exactly Kaname says that. So let's talk about it. Sup my awesome mad lads, Mad Dog here, and welcome back to another Mad Theory. Last Mad Theory episode, we actually talked about Yuki Kuron's hair growth when she turns back into a vampire after regaining her memories. This time, we're also going to be talking about this quote right here that Kaname actually says in Vampire Knight Guilty. Now, this quote specifically actually appears in both of the episodes, episode 9 and 10. Basically, he says this exact same quote in the ending of episode 9 and the beginning of episode 10 in Vampire Knight Guilty. A lot of people have been speculating about this quote specifically about Kaname, and I'm not quite sure whether they're a revisited Vampire Knight or still a Vampire Knight fan. Probably a lot of people would have to speculate a lot and try to figure this out. And as for me, I kind of figured it out a little bit curious myself, and I actually wanted to know why exactly was that the case. As we know that most of the time that the purebloods in the Vampire Knight world are technically to be known as the powerful vampires of all time. Especially when you consider the Kuron family, which are basically the main core of purebloods in the vampire line. Now, people are obviously usually really don't actually like agreeing to this sort of term due to the fact of how the writer technically thought about this idea of siblings to actually be together. Just to keep it simple, I don't want to go too far. Now, technically, as Kaname said in episode 10 of Vampire Knight Guilty, he actually tells Aido and Hanabusa and Akatsuki Aido that it is actually a common practice for pureblood siblings to marry each other to preserve their thick blood. However, it's not to say that, a pureblood can also marry another pureblood that is not related to the family, such as Rito and Shizuka Hiro, for example. However, the problem is with Rito Kuron is that he had an absolute obsession with Juri Kuron, who is actually technically the sister of the brother Rito and Haruka Kuron, but is also the wife of Haruka Kuron as well, which is the thing where things got a little bit crazy. So try to stick with me if you can. Now, at first, I actually never really knew about the whole ideal of, having the fact of, pureblood siblings to actually marry myself, and I never understood why that was, as again, I was still young at that time when I was trying to figure that out, and it's just rattled my brain a bit. So technically, I needed to figure out more. But of course, I never found anything until this very point, which I've now found thanks to this site. Now, if you ever look into the fandom site and just type in Vampire Knight, you'll probably get some information out of that. Now, as Yuki says that she figures that, that Juri and Haruka Kuron are actually siblings, but also Rito Kuron is a sibling as well to the Kuron family, along with their parents. Now, a lot of people have no idea, probably, of who Juri, Haruka, and Rito's parents are. That's the thing. Until once you actually go into the fandom site and look out for, the Lost Kuron King or the Lost Kuron King, and guess what? They actually turn out to be siblings as well. And so that's when basically they had Juri, Rito, and also Haruka, which is you would expect to believe by now that they could have just been regular pureblood vampires that that weren't freaking siblings, but okay, I guess not. But the problem is they actually really don't add much. However, it does state in this fandom right here that given the Kuron family's tradition of marriage between siblings is to keep the pure blood line, she might have been the last Kuron King's sister in addition to being his wife. She probably had the same, which kind of interests me, is how the heck can you possibly be the only Kuron purebloods? I mean, why can't you just marry other purebloods that are not freaking siblings. I mean, that's the problem here. I mean, what was the deal? They don't technically have like some sort of specific rule or anything like that, or to why the heck that was even brought up in the first place, which is a bit weird. I mean, the thing about the Lost Coding King, it also states that he didn't like the idea of absolute monarchy. So he created the Vampire Council, making him the last king in his family. Also to be having a rather strict and authoritative towards his eldest child, Rito, which again, wants him to marry Shizuka Hiwa instead. But still, once again, it doesn't really bring up much of to see, like, why the heck was that rule even freaking brought up in the first place. Which I feel like that if they are going to think about talking about that, I feel like this thing needs to be, like, a bit more expressed a bit lightly, okay? And as for Kaname Kuron, as he states that in that quote alone, even Zero had no idea what Kaname was actually even talking about. Like, what did he actually mean by that? I even decided to... And by the way, there's this video about the Vampire Knight Q&A that actually happened. Oh, right, yeah, it may not technically look like much, but once you actually click into it, you'll get to see. Technically, the three main actors of Vampire Knight were actually there in this specific video, which, by the way, I never even knew it even existed. Technically, it was actually called the Vampire Knight Unofficial Reunion Panel, which literally actually uploaded a year ago by the content creator Rainbow Heart TV, and I never knew that this was even happening. Like, this was amazing. The three main actors of Vampire Knight, the three main protagonists, Melody as Yuki Cross, Vic Mignona as Zero Kiryu, and also Ichiri Kuryu, actually, and Ezra Wise as Kaname Kuron. And when actually one of the audience from the panel was actually asking that specific question that Kaname said, they said this. They literally had no idea. It was funny and I loved it. It was just like, they had no idea. You can literally obviously tell that they just couldn't be able to figure out what they would, like, what it actually meant. So it was like kind of interesting that they actually did not technically know, in a sense. Though technically speaking, in Kaname's sense, what he was actually meant to say in this site right here, fanpub.com, is that he wished he had been Yuki's real brother because it would have been easier and simpler, and his many great grandson wouldn't have had to die. Because, of course, as we all know, in the Vampire Knight manga, apparently that Kaname is technically not Yuki's brother, but is still anyways because he is the ancestor also of Yuki, because back in this was like probably like what, eons ago or something, that Kaname Kuron apparently decided to, he was actually like, you know, there was another Kaname out there which is basically the exact original as we all know and love, but apparently what happened is that Rito Kuron apparently got like taken by Rito Kuron, as I said before, that Rito wanted Kaname to become his ultimate servant, which is why Kaname also was known to be as the progenitor of the Kurons. So it kind of feels like that he was also half the ancestor of the original Kaname, but once he was given birth, when the Kaname that we know was given birth by Juri and Haruka Kuron, that's when Rito decided to actually kidnap Kaname and try to retrieve, like, I don't know, like some sort of ritual that could bring back the Kaname before him from the past, to actually bring back those vampire-like genes, but also to become his master. And that's how he became the progenitor of the Kurons. So I guess you could probably understand, I can understand what Kaname is actually saying in this point. Like, if none of that ever happened, if Rito did not kidnap Kaname Kuron as he was, and then becoming the progenitor of the Kurons, then he wouldn't have to go through with this. I don't feel like that Kaname would have to go through, you know, this crazy rule or law, however the heck you want to put it, of like having to marry your own sibling. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And that being the case, even Yuki even noticed straight off the bat, because she knew, like, obviously, that's why she decided to go with Zero instead of Kaname, because, as you know, it is obviously wrong to freaking, like, marry your own sibling. It's just so wrong. Completely dead straight. You cannot put it any more simpler than that. So, which, at least, the good news is that at least Yuki managed to be with Zero in the end, finally, but it should have actually I think it should have been a bit, it should have happened a bit more earlier, I think, if that makes any sense. I don't want to sound like too harsh, but it kind of feels like that way, you know what I mean? But anyways, what do you guys think about this whole scenario about, Yuki having to marry his brother Kaname, in the sense that, and how Kaname feels about this sort of role that he has to partake in as a Kuran? What do you guys think about that? Let me know in the comments below, because it kind of feels like that Kaname doesn't really want to be in this position. He really doesn't want to. I mean, he loves his sister, but he wants to feel like that, he wants to be more of a brother, more than just having to be a Kuran vampire that has to follow this rule of marrying their own sibling. That's basically how much I feel like that's what they're trying to go with, and I feel like that's how they wanted to portray Kaname in that sense. Which I feel for him, because, like, he doesn't want to, like, it makes sense that he does, of course, he doesn't want to do that sort of thing himself either. He doesn't want to. So, yeah, I guess that kind of makes a lot more sense if you think about it like that. But let me know in the comments down below, again. Let me know your thoughts, whether you think I'm right or wrong about this. This is because this is kind of like one of the most complicated things about Vampire Knight, but I also wanted to just finally talk about, if anyone else has even talked about it. I'm pretty sure that Negative Legend has already talked about it, but, like, as for him, he's kind of taken over a different part, but I don't know. This was just the one chance for me to finally talk about it. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please like, subscribe if you haven't already, and click on the notification bell to never miss a video. And as always, my name is Mad Dog, and let your days be mad and ride!